Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Way of Life. I'm your host, Gus Holland. Before we begin this episode, I want to inform you that wayoflifepodcast.com is officially live. That's where you can find all social media links. You can listen to the podcast. You can also find merch. That's WHEY, like the protein. As always, leaving a rating and review and sharing with a friend is the best way to help the podcast, and I greatly appreciate it. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Hey everybody, today's episode is going to be about normal hormone production and its effect during exercise. I'm going to start off this episode by listing off the individual hormonal organs and then their functions and what specifically they produce. First off, we have the pituitary gland. It is split up into two different parts. There's the anterior, which produces growth hormones and stimulates the growth of bone, muscle, and connective tissue. And then we have the posterior lobe, which releases an antidiuretic hormone, which controls the liquids in your body, such as your urine output. Growth hormone is regulated by IGF-1 and IGF-2, which are small polypeptides, which are secreted by the liver. IGF-1 and IGF-2, that stands for insulin growth factor 1 and insulin growth factor 2. Further down in your neck, we have the thyroid gland, which regulates metabolism and helps with bone growth, nervous system development, and brain development in children. Your thyroid hormones maintain normal blood pressure, heart rate, digestion, muscle tone, and reproductive functions within your entire body. Now, on your thyroid gland, you have 4 smaller glands called parathyroids. Those regulate the calcium levels in your blood and also your bone metabolism. Your adrenal glands are located above your kidneys, and they produce hormones called corticosteroids. Corticosteroids regulate your body's metabolism, the balance of sodium and water in your body, your immune system, and some of your sexual functions. Adrenal glands produce norepinephrine and epinephrine. Both of these help regulate your fight or flight response, as well as adrenaline responses. Your pancreas creates glucagon and insulin, both of which work together to regulate your blood sugar levels. And then finally, we get to your reproductive glands. In males, the testes secrete androgens. The most important androgen is testosterone for males. Testosterone regulates the release of growth hormone from your pituitary gland. This leads to insulin growth factor release. For women, the reproductive gland is the ovaries. This produces estrogen and progesterone. Both of these help with reproductive functions as well as the development of female characteristics such as breast tissue. I was trying to list these in order from top of your head down throughout your body. However, I did leave out the pineal gland, which is at the very top in the center of the brain. And the pineal gland is shaped very similarly to a pine cone. That's where it gets its name from. And the pineal gland produces melatonin. Melatonin is also a hormone, and it is produced in response to darkness. This hormone helps with the timing of your circadian rhythm, which is basically your internal 24-hour clock, and it also helps with your sleep cycles. It's important to keep in mind that being exposed to light at nighttime can actually block your melatonin production. That's why a lot of influencers are coming out and saying to try and limit phone time or screen time before bed. This works the other way as well. Being exposed to darkness during the day can also have an effect on melatonin production. Now that we've covered the hormonal organs and their basic functions, I'd like to go ahead and get into the body's response during exercise with these specific hormones. So in regards to basic hormone, kind of like an overall picture of the hormone response, comparing highly trained athletes to sedentary individuals, when an absolute exercise level is achieved, the hormonal response is lower in athletes versus sedentary individuals. However, with relative exercise, both groups, the highly trained athletes and the sedentary individuals, have a similar hormonal response. Relative exercise is exactly that. It relates specifically to the individual. Basically, if you're a sedentary individual is doing 70% of their max on an individual exercise, and a highly trained athlete is doing 70% of their max, they are going to have a similar hormonal response. Therefore, we can throw out the notion of, not necessarily a notion, but a lot of people that are looking to get in a healthier state, or, they look up to an individual influencer. They see them performing these exercises, and just as an example, battle ropes, where you have a rope in each hand and you're going up and down with it really fast, kind of like a cardio movement. People look at that and be like, well, I can't do that nearly as efficient as that guy. I can't do it as fast as that guy. Therefore, I'm going to be at a disadvantage. I'm going to be burning less fat. I'm going to, have a worse time with that exercise, or I'm going to look stupid or whatever. If you're achieving like his max speed and heart rate and everything, and even the weight of the individual ropes will be different than yours. But if y'all are both doing, we'll say 80%, and you're doing 80% of your max effort, and he's doing 80% of max effort, you're going to have a similar response within your body. So you can throw out the whole idea of like, I'm performing this exercise less efficient, therefore I'm getting a worse outcome. Now, when we look at the individual hormones such as insulin and glucagon, insulin stores fuel while glucagon mobilizes fuel. Both have a similar response within the body during exercise. So during a short time, meaning like less than 10 minutes, for a short time of exercise, less than 10 minutes, with a light to moderate level of exercise, you're going to see a small decline before leveling off with insulin, and a slight rise before leveling off with glucagon. With a longer term exercise, 30 to 60 minutes of moderate to heavy exercise, such as like a steady state cardio, you're going to see a noticeable decline followed by a gradual decline in insulin. And then you're going to see a noticeable increase followed by a gradual increase of glucagon. Now, you get more intense with anaerobic sprinting. There's no real obvious changes in either. And the same goes for heavy resistance exercise. Now, in terms of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which create the flight or fight response, as well as some other increases in heart rate, etc., that we've already covered, you're going to, with short-term light to moderate exercise, you're going to see a minimal increase in production. Long-term, meaning 30 to 60 minute moderate to heavy exercise, you're going to see a time-dependent but gradual increase. With both anaerobic sprinting and heavy resistance exercise, you're going to see an exponential increase in the production of epinephrine and norepinephrine. In regards to growth hormone is the protein hormone that generally has a slow response rate to exercise. However, the greater the intensity of the exercise, the shorter the delay period in production. So just following the same example guidelines, with short-term light to moderate exercise, there's no real change. There's a gradual rise with long-term exercise. Short-term high-intensity exercise will elicit a growth hormone response, but its manifestation can be anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes into your recovery time, your recovery period. But with high volume resistance exercise specifically, there's an exponential increase in the production of growth hormone. Cortisol is produced to maintain proper glucose metabolism, as well as to help regulate blood pressure, your immune function, and inflammation responses within the body. Cortisol actually inhibits protein synthesis and converts amino acids and other proteins to carbohydrates in order to use them as fuel. Cortisol, I don't really have like a chart for this in the same manner as which I was explaining the others, but cortisol in general will remain in the blood and be at an elevated state for up to several hours after resistance exercise. So if cortisol remains elevated or is not eliminated within the body at a rate equal to its production, catabolism and wasting may occur. So this is normally where people get the idea, and it's true, of excessive amount of cardio can actually diminish your muscle and strength gains within the gym. With all of this being said, it's important to remember that performance adaptations such as strength and hypertrophy can only be enhanced with optimum stimulation of the neuroendocrine system with adequate rest periods to ensure supercompensation. In simpler terms, you want to keep all this information in mind. You don't want to stress over it too much, but knowing the basics of this information will allow you to know what type of exercises will help or hinder your growth within the gym. Obviously, it depends upon your goals. If you're wanting a massive increase in cardio and endurance, maybe you won't worry so much about cortisol levels, but you might worry more about that if you're kind of going for a strength goal or strength and physique goal. That about wraps up this episode for today. I really appreciate y'all listening. Once again, you can check out Way of Life Podcast to listen to the podcast, check out merch, anything really. You can also find the hotline number there and submit questions, etc. Thanks so much. If you like this episode, share it with a friend, like, rate, review. You know the drill. Y'all have a great day.